Another Dead Teenager, a Paul Turner Mystery, Book 3. Author, Mark Richard Zubro. Stonewall Inn Mysteries. Narrator, Eric Aust. Dedication to all the bookstore owners who have been so kind and so helpful. Chapter 1. Paul Turner typed his name at the bottom of the daily log, his last act in the paperwork for their latest case. He let out a long breath. Buck Fenwick tossed his pen on the pile of paper he'd been plowing through all morning. "You done?" Fenwick asked. Turner rubbed two fists over tired eyes and shoved himself away from his desk. "Yeah," he muttered. He glanced around the squad room. "Where is everybody?" "They've been at lunch for hours." "Come on." Fenwick's ever-expanding bulk necessitated regular feeding, and he did not appreciate being late for meals. They'd been working all morning on reports that capped a brief but sensational investigation. A couple had claimed they'd come home to their luxury high-rise apartment on Lakeshore Drive and found their 18-year-old son shot 6 times. Since they were rich, white, and lived at a wealthy address, the press had done their best. Swarm of locust imitation around the grief-stricken parents and harassed cops. They had described their family life as more perfect than a warm, fuzzy sitcom on television. Conversations with the dead boy's friends, however, revealed a bleak but all too familiar picture of a family out of control. The friends told about a kid who flew into violent rages and confrontations with his parents. A kid who spent inordinate amounts of mysteriously gotten money on drugs and parties. The parents dismissed the discrepancy in views of the family's life as nonsense from drug addicts who weren't worthy of being our son's friends. What the parents couldn't do was cover up the lack of footprints in the pool of blood around the body, and the absence of bloodstains on their clothes, which would have been expected if they'd approached the body. As a father, Turner knew if he found either of his sons hurt or injured, he'd have rushed to his side and not stood at a distance waiting for the police to confirm horrific news. These two anomalies and the differing family portraits were the starting points in convincing Turner that the parents had killed the kid themselves. Presented with their lack of appropriate parental response and a lot less pressure than Turner would have thought necessary, the father had blurted out the truth. He always looked not only at what the suspects did do, but what they didn't do. Turner and Fenwick could have walked the 3 blocks to Dearborn Street for lunch, but Fenwick insisted on using the car. "Why walk when you could drive?" was Fenwick's motto. As he drove, he easily managed to outpace most of the gusts of wind hurrying through the South Loop. Cool early autumn air had replaced yesterday's thunderstorms. Aunt Millie's Bar and Grill had been popular with cops for years. They packed the place at mealtimes and before and after each shift change. But no matter what time of day or night, or even what item was ordered, all the food on the menu seemed to come out as mounds of artery-clogging glop, or, on a good day, something akin to stale heaps of crust. The noisy, dim, smoke-filled room was usually crammed with cops. The motley mix occasionally got flavored with a lost tourist or two, or a couple of brave or demented locals. 2 mystery writers had wandered in once, trying to get information about detective work. Millie told them lies, while the real cops grinned and guffawed behind them. Aunt Millie's was the last bastion of a grittier Chicago past, in the recently upscale Printers Row area of the city. Turner and Fenwick joined Harold Rodriguez, Dwayne Smythe, and Ashley Devonshire, 3 other cops from Area 10, at a circular booth near the back of the restaurant. After raucous greetings and orders given to a waitress in a rhinestone-studded apron, Fenwick asked Rodriguez, "Where's Carruthers?" Randy Carruthers, curse of the day shift, was Rodriguez's partner. "Do I care?" Rodriguez said. "Maybe he fell into the lake and drowned, or he was kissing ass so hard he died in a gas attack. I can only hope something unpleasant happened to him if I ever decide to kill somebody. My fondest wish is that they assign the case to Carruthers. I'd never be caught." Ashley pointed to Turner, then Fenwick, and asked, "Did you guys really wrap up that Lakeshore Drive shooting last night?" Both detectives nodded. Dwayne Pink-cheeked with short, brush-cut black hair and perfect teeth, and Ashley, an African-American woman with a pleasant smile and a melodious voice, were the newest additions to the Area 10 Detective Squad. Their newness did not prevent them from adopting the most blatant attitude of, "Been there, done that," Turner had ever run into. If you had a crime with 10 dead bodies, they had one with 11. If you'd worked 19 hours, they'd work 20. If you'd solved a case in 10 hours, they could have done it in 9. "Damn, you guys are good," Dwayne said. He reached over and twiddled Fenwick's tie. The older cop growled, "You guys are good, but Ashley and I are good and lucky. Well, that's the combination you've got to have." Ashley patted Fenwick's hand. "You're cute when you're angry." "I don't see why you worked so hard on the case," Rodriguez said. "They did the world a favor. It was just another dead teenager, not enough of those around." "It was their own kid," Ashley said. "You see it all the time." Turner knew the source of Rodriguez's sourness on teenagers. Of Rodriguez's 4 kids, 2 had been in jail by the age of 16. A third was saved from prison only because he could run faster than an overweight beat cop. And the 4th had run away 6 months ago. Rodriguez, as being a cop, had protected his kids from prosecution only a little, and that only in the beginning. Turner liked Rodriguez, found him affable as a companion and more than competent as a cop. He couldn't imagine the home life that led to such misery. "All kids are rotten," Rodriguez said. "You still encourage a teenager to hang out on street corners and join gangs?" Fenwick asked. "Whenever I can. More chances to shoot each other that way." For a few more minutes, Rodriguez continued on a tirade about how awful kids were while the others ate in silence. Turner turned him out. He'd heard the litany of teenage sins and perversions innumerable times before, as their mounds of grease, reputedly burgers, this afternoon, were delivered. Fenwick's radio crackled. Fenwick put the portable next to his ear to listen. He moved the mouthpiece to his lips, gave a brief response, and said to Turner, "Oh, we gotta go. Grab your stuff." Turner didn't ask questions. He threw money on the table, picked up his burger and plastic cup filled with coffee, and followed Fenwick out to the car. Behind the wheel, Fenwick said, "We got a dead body in an abandoned warehouse at 20th and Lumber Streets." Fenwick drove and ate while Turner balanced his drink against Fenwick's quick starts, rapid acceleration, sharp turns, and abrupt stops. If he had to drive 5 feet or 500 miles, he pushed a car as fast as it would go, rarely bothering with what the terrain or road conditions would allow. "Bonnie will still be dead when we get there," Turner said around several bites of burger. Fenwick grunted. Turner was mostly used to Fenwick's mad careening, but he didn't relish the idea of a lap full of hot coffee. They hurried down Clark Street to 20th and turned west across the river. A blue and white squad car rested on the pavement in front of a building bounded by the Chicago River. Lumber Street and 20th Street. Most of the windows were broken out of the 5-story structure. Grimy maroon bricks made up the walls of the hopelessly dilapidated outer shell of the old factory. They grabbed flashlights and notebooks and strode toward a uniformed cop standing on the threshold. "You guys won't believe it," the cop said. Turner didn't recognize the officer, who was short, blonde-haired, and slender, but he did recognize the trembling and excitement. Probably just out of the police academy and hadn't seen a dead body before. The guy was torn between the desire to gape and the urge to toss his lunch. "How'd the call come in?" Fenwick growled. The cop blinked. He said, "Huh? Who found the body? Who called it in?" "Some little kid. Playing where he wasn't supposed to. That's not the big thing." "What is?" Fenwick asked. "The dead guy is Ken Goldstein's son." Fenwick glared at the guy a moment, then said, "It's still just a dead guy." Fenwick's attitude was the right one. Turner knew, but still, the Goldstein name would bring hordes of reporters. Ken Goldstein had been the coach of 2 college basketball national championships teams in his years at St. Basil's University in Frankfurt. a far south suburb of Chicago. Moving on from there, it took him 10 years to win 2 national basketball championships in the NBA for several years. His name had been almost as magical in Chicago sports as Michael Jordan's. The press circus of the case that just finished would be nothing compared to the moms around them now. "How do you know it's Goldstein's son?" Turner asked. "Driver's license and other stuff in his wallet," the blonde said. "You touched the body?" Fenwick snapped. "Just for identification." Fenwick snarled and growled and said, "Just for nothing, you dumb shit, numbnuts, asshole." Fenwick enjoyed teaching rookie cops a lesson, and Turner let him shout out. The kid had to learn sometime. Fenwick pushed his nose an inch from the young cop's face. "Never touch anything. Never. Don't go near the scene. Just call the detectives and stay away." The blonde turned pale and gulped. His voice squeaked. "Yes, sir." "Don't they teach you guys anything at the academy?" Fenwick didn't wait for an answer. "You got a partner in there screwing things up?" Yeah. No. The cop scratched his head in bewilderment. "He's in there." "Stay out of here." Fenwick jabbed a finger into the cop's chest to punctuate each sentence. "Keep everybody out of here. I don't care if the police superintendent, the mayor, and the Pope show up. Nobody gets in unless they're from the crime lab or the medical examiner's office." "Yes, sir." The blonde gave them directions for finding the body inside. Before entering, Turner and Fenwick examined the pavement for 20 feet on either side of the entrance. Nothing amid the urban destruction jumped up and said, "I'm a clue." Turner glanced at the building across the street, more boarded up old factories or warehouses. The one on the corner 100 feet away was a burned out hulk. "Not going to be a lot of witnesses in the neighborhood," Turner said. "Not much traffic either," Fenwick added. Outside, the gusty wind had whipped autumn cold through every tiny opening in their clothes. Inside, Turner felt the cool and damp cloying at his skin. Light from outdoors filtered through the broken windows. From former offices along the west side of the building, remnants of this glow then seeped into the quarter they were in. They flipped on their flashlights and shone them ahead, then tramped carefully down the center of the structure. Most of the floor and ceiling on the level were still intact. The walls were water-stained, and the floorboards mushed under their feet. "The place should have been torn down," Fenwick said. "No signs of blood and gore or dead bodies here," Turner said. The building smelled of mold, urine, and excrement. The detectives passed a bank of empty, gaping service elevators. They encountered the promised stairway at the far end of the passage. They let their flashlight beams linger on each step and railing. They ascended the stairs and, following the blonde's directions, walked down a corridor, past 5 openings, and turned right. A frightened voice called, "Who's there?" They identified themselves. Seconds later, another cop, younger than the one downstairs, but put a trembling face around a corner. "It's a little spooky up here," he said. "Where's the victim?" Turner asked. The cop pointed into the room he'd just left and stepped out into the hall. The naked male body lay on its back 10 feet from the entrance to the room. A broken-out window on the east wall let in oblique sunlight, and a slight breeze shattered glass and rotting fast food. Containers lay strewn across half the floor. The walls had turned gray and brown, with blotches of mold spreading from corners or crevices where the paint had first begun to peel. A heap of clothes was scattered in one corner. Neither detective made a move to enter the room. They would make preliminary observations and begin their sketches of the scene from here. And then, along with the crime lab, they'd make a painstakingly careful entrance. "A lot of blood," Fenwick said. Great gouts and spurts of blood had sprayed halfway up the 2 walls nearest the body. Vast pools of dark red covered nearly half the floor. The crime lab would automatically check for footprints inadvertently left by the killer here, in the hall, and any likely place in the building. One set was readily visible, probably the cop who checked the identification. The pool of blood could have covered any others, or the killer could have brought a second pair of shoes, showing lots of planning and premeditation. A killer who stopped to clean up his footprints suggested a cool hand. Turner could make out a gaping hole in the left side of the corpse's head, the blood and brains smeared on the filth-encrusted wall behind him. Bullet holes in the torso are at a funny angle, Turner said. Funny haha or funny weird? Asked Fenwick. The two of them crouched together in the wide doorway. Kind of coming up out of the body, Turner said. I've seen at least 100 of these, and I've never seen holes like that. These aren't like they exploded straight through one side to the other, but as if they sort of popped up from inside. Fenwick shone the flashlight on the boy's wrists and ankles. Round abrasions? Probably tied with a rope. He flicked the light over the body. Nice looking kid, he said. Turner eyed the corpse dispassionately. The face, with lifeless eyes staring, was undamaged, with a few flecks of red under the chin and bits of interior body parts caught at the throat. It was a handsome face. Both broad shoulders were intact, and the parts of the abdomen still recognizable as such were flat and muscular. Around 15 or 16? Fenwick opined. Turner recalled reading an article in the paper when Ken Goldstein's son won the state of Illinois tennis high school championship a few weeks ago. He told Fenwick what he remembered. He finished. The paper had a picture of him with this real attractive girl in a cheerleader outfit. Fenwick played his flashlight on the gaping eyes. One dead Studenwaffen, he said. They stood up and retreated back into the corridor. Fenwick began examining the hallway. With his flashlight, he stooped and pointed at a dark smear. Could be blood, he said. We need to get lots more light in here. Turner said. Fenwick gave a grunt of agreement, then added, half the goddamn reporters in the country are going to be sniffing around this one. Whenever possible, the commander of Area 10 put Turner and Fenwick on the cases that could involve lots of publicity. He knew the two detectives wouldn't be stampeded into making an arrest, and that they had an over 95% conviction rate on those they did bust. The commander wanted seasoned veterans who could ride out a media feeding frenzy, and he had them in Turner and Fenwick. They heard noise behind them and turned to see members of the crime lab. Turner and Fenwick began making sketches of the scene in their regulation blue folders. Turner drew the body, noting the wound sites he could see without shifting it. He'd add more sketches when the medical examiner turned the body over. 3 hours later, they'd learned a couple of things. They confirmed that the Kennecomite police, where the dead boy lived, had a missing person report on Jacob Goldstein, the famous coach's son. But they also had one on a friend of the team's, Frank Douglas, son of a former Olympic track and field star. Turner, Fenwick, a local beat cop, the medical examiner, and 2 members of the crime lab held a conference next to the broken-out window, where they found the body. What they had so far was evidence of only one killer. The murder had taken place in this room. More lab tests were necessary to check for traces of sexual assault. The victim had fought against his bonds. The ME said to Turner, "You were right about the funny angle of some of the wounds. Kid was shot up the ass, at least twice. Bullets came up and out." He nodded at the crime lab tech. "A fluid test will tell us a lot. Killer kept shooting him after he was dead." Turner said, "So somehow the killer gets the drop on an athletic teenager and ties him up. Chooses this place because it's isolated and abandoned, so he won't be disturbed. Obviously picked out carefully. Homeless and gangs don't usually hang out in here," the local uniformed patrolman said. "It's too ruined, even for them," Turner said. "From the looks of this, I'd say we've got a very angry person who is still able to plan extremely carefully." Heads nodded. The patrolman said, I inventoried everything in the room. The kid's underwear is missing. I got jeans, socks, shoes, sweatshirt, undershirt, coat, but no shorts. Gosh, sounds like a clue to me, Fenwick said. Footprints you saw were definitely from the cop who identified him. Figures, Fenwick said. Who's the security firm for this place? Turner asked. The patrolman said, Save Our Souls. They all chuckled. Save Our Souls was their nickname for Illinois' Safe Serve, the most notoriously useless security company in the area. Reputedly, they hired retired suburban cops who were past the retirement age of any police department within hundreds of miles. Cop lore in the city had it that they gave their guards one bullet for their guns. If they had any trouble, they were supposed to shoot themselves. They were also the cheapest outfit in the city. Your insurance company, assuming you had one for some of these hulks, would see the wonderful firm on paper and assume you were a responsible landlord. We'll have to talk to the Kennecommite police and find out where this kid was supposed to be, Fenwick said. Somebody was going to call, the patrolman said. I'll check in a minute, Turner said. We'll have to examine the outside of the building before we leave, Fenwick said. We could probably get a couple of uniformed cops to go over it, inch by inch. I don't envy you guys on this one, the ME said. The dad was famous, so was the kid. You'll have people oozing out of the woodwork trying to help. 99.9%? Won't know shit. Maybe we'll even get a task force, Fenwick said. Gosh shucks, I'm all excited, Turner said. He sighed. I better go find that uniform with a report from Kennecommite. Turner re-entered the room 10 minutes later. We have another call. Tell them we're going to interview the parents, Fenwick said. They need to find somebody else. It's about the other kid, the one that was with Jake Goldstein. He's not sobbing his eyes out and confessing to murder, is he? Fenwick asked. Not unless he's doing it from some kind of afterlife. They found him on the bottom level of the Columbus Drive parking garage. Single bullet hole through the head. Fenwick glanced back at the shredded corpse in the room. Killer used 2 different methods. Not that different, Turner said. A gun in both cases. Maybe our killer just used 1 bullet there, but he had more time here, or maybe the Douglas kid killed his buddy and then decided to blow himself away in an inconvenient parking garage. Or, Fenwick said, a third person, maybe more that we don't know about, was on the scene and killed them in different locations for obscure, mystical reasons. Mystical? It's my day of the month to be philosophical. I've been holding my breath for this moment. Why were they in town? Bears game last night. Never understood that Thursday night shit. One of those cable television deals. Had them for a couple of years now. Fenwick glanced back at the room. I guess we'll know more at the other scene in the Chicago Police Department. Whoever got the first call on a case investigated all subsequent crimes discovered that had connection to the first. That meant Turner and Fenwick had another body. Not a chance they'd be home before midnight. The uniform who had met them at the front door entered the room. You guys might need to look at this place we found. They followed him out the door. I should have snapped at you earlier, Fenwick said to the young cop. Sorry. The uniform shrugged. Up a flight of stairs to the 3rd floor at the far end of a hall, they found a room slightly smaller than the one with the dead body. The young cop pointed at a tattered sleeping bag, 6 pop cans and boxes and wrappers for McDonald's burgers and french fries. What is this shit? Fenwick asked. Somebody said gangs and the homeless didn't show up here. Kids, the patrolman said. Maybe the ones who found the body. Sweep it for everything, bag it all, and save it, Turner said. Better have all the prints taken. Any other signs of habitation in the building? That's all we found so far. We're taking a second look. Before they got in their car, they walked slowly around the northwest and south sides of the building. The 4th side formed part of the retaining wall for the Chicago River. Must have parked somewhere, Fenwick said. Unless they drove up in a boat. They craned their necks around the northeast corner of the building. The wall of the factory plunged straight down into the river. What might at one time have been a loading dock had long since been bricked over. No place to tie up or get in, Turner said. The north side of the building had the entrance. Turner and Fenwick had used. Rusting wire mesh covered the windows on the ground floor that faced Lumber Street on the west side of the building. A gangway, barely wide enough for a person to walk through, ran along half of the south side of the building. The other half faced a field overgrown with years of debris, weeds, and bushes. Hard to get in anywhere back here, Turner said. Stopping in front of risks somebody driving by on the street. They scrambled up the cracked concrete of the loading dock, which ran for the same length the field did. Any of several broken doors and smashed windows could have given the killer access. Better get all these dusted, Fenwick said. Hard to drag a squirming kid through here, Turner said. Must have done something. Let's get some uniforms to go over every inch of this. Fenwick didn't even bother trying to take surface streets across the loop. It was after 4, and it could take them over an hour to make a 10-minute trip through the rush hour crush. Fenwick eased down Wall Street and took the cutoff to Lower Wacker Drive. They sped quickly along the road which ran between the Chicago River and the bottoms of decrepit buildings, whose nooks, crannies, and shadows housed a large portion of homeless hunkering down against the coming winter. The group of people at the Wacker Drive entrance to the parking garage parted slowly to let the unmarked police car inch its way forward, while Fenwick waited for a uniformed male cop to unhook the police crime scene tape. A young female cop leaned in the passenger side window next to Turner and said, "Down on level 3. The tires squeaked as Fenwick raced through the turns. "Body's not going anywhere," Turner said. Fenwick grunted. On level 3, a small crowd of civilians stood near the lighted cashier's booth. A uniformed cop waved them over. He pointed around a wall that divided the sections of the garage. "That way." "Who's down there?" Fenwick asked. "Couple of guys from 11th and State." "Dumb fuck," Fenwick said. Turner saw a knot of police brass and a few uniformed cops gathered about 50 feet beyond the curve to the next level. Among them, Turner recognized the Director of Research and Development, the Commander of the Communication Division, and the Deputy Superintendent of Technical Services. They slouched and stared at something on the far side of the Chevrolet conversion van. They weren't going to contribute anything to the investigation. They were only desk-bound cops, come to gawk at the famous dead. Keeping in mind Fenwick's dislike for brass and his ability to shoot his mouth off at the wrong moment, Turner made sure he got to the scene before Fenwick could make insistent comments about them butting out. "Could you all step over here for a minute?" Turner asked. "We need to make a few sketches." The brass ambled a few feet away. Making preliminary sketches was a good excuse to get the brass to move, and better than Fenwick bellowing at them to move their butts. The Columbus Drive underground garage had only recently opened. The lines marking the parking spaces still gleamed bright yellow in their newness. The gray cinder blocks in their thousands held up tons of darker gray poured concrete. The neon lights interrupted and intruded upon the shadows, but seemed more to be in an armed truce with the darkness that conquered the night. The body lay between the front of the van and the wall. Shadows hid nearly everything but the outline of a human form. Turner could barely make out the gaping hole in the left side of Frank Douglas's head. A shaft of light a few feet behind and above caught smears of blood and brains on the cement behind him. The feeble light managed to catch the white of the lifeless eyes. Even after so many years on the job, the open, staring eyes of death caused Turner to pause. Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold: to offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides, and in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.